forth for a Revelation Foundation. Thank you for making it possible.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to The Late Show. A little bit earlier this evening, we are step 4 of The Late Show and the Bible study. So if you were tuning in, or you thought you were tuning in to the Bible study, that's tomorrow night. That will start for 2 one-hour programs starting at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So tonight, Late Show, we're going to be discussing the migrant crisis. And when we know that it's going to be diverse opinions and understandings, and some may think some of the opinions are a bit harsh or that we're a bit naive. But let's talk about it. This is a very important subject indeed. Now, I just want to introduce my colleagues as well. Ian Bell, pastor, and also a presenter on Revelation TV. Thank you for being here this evening. I do need you. And Pastor Hugh Jackman is also a very familiar face with Revelation TV regular viewers. So if you're a first-time viewer to Christian television, be warned, just when you thought it was safe to watch Christian television, things can change. Because it is something which is important, we believe, to our Lord Jesus Christ. What would he do? What would he say? What would he advise us to do? Because many of us have diverse opinions on the situation. But tonight is going to be a little bit different than what we've done before, because we want you to take part in this. There's several ways to do that. One is a phone call, 0208 972 1408. Yes, 0208 972 1408. We want to hear from you. We want you to have your say. It's not necessarily going to be limited, but we may cut you off only because we have to move on, and maybe if you're rude. We don't want you to be rude, we want you to have your say. You don't have to agree with us, but we do have to be civil. I think that's all right to do that, right? Thank you. Live at revelationtv.com is the email address by which you can actually send your comments. We would ask you to make them short. The reason is because we want to try and get them on the screen in the best fashion we have. We haven't got the BBC money, so it's a little bit higgity-poo, but that's the way it is on Revelation TV at the moment on our limited budget. We also want your SMS, text, if that's the way you want to send in your messages, and of course they will be short by nature. And we thank you again for being part of The Late Show. It'll be in 2 one-hour segments, so let's get started. The European migrant crisis continues to be in the news, and the tragic photo of an innocent drowned 3-year-old on the Turkish beach actually touched all our hearts and really changed our focus and perhaps our sense of duty. As did the scenes of thousands of people walking along the motorway to Austrian, Germany and other places that they want to end up with. Politicians don't seem to have the answers. And this evening we want to hear from you what you think should be done. So what should the Christian, particularly a Christian's response be? And we want you to take part in this, as I said. Let me just say it might be good just to start with a couple of video clips. One in particular that I think will set the scene for tonight's discussions.
The welcome couldn't have been warmer. For refugees who'd been desperate to reach Germany, some joining family members already there, the long journey was finally over. Chancellor Merkel has made their dream possible. The dream of living safely away from the bloodshed of a civil war. The dream of a fresh start.
My shop is pumped. My house pumped. I decided to go from Syria. I hope to find here a better life to me and to my family.
There were gifts from German children for new arrivals their own age, and from the not-so-young the same heartfelt message: we're happy to receive you. I come from Regensburg and came down to Munich to be with the residents when they greeted their guests like a world city with open hearts. We're living so well and we can finally help them. It's just that we have to give them what we can. We have to show them that they're welcome, and it's terrible how they were treated in Hungary. Huge challenges remain, but hope, perseverance and German generosity will help these refugees begin their new life.
The aunt of Aylan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian boy washed ashore on Bodrum beach, and his brother Galip, also lost at sea, has been speaking about her family's grief from her home in Canada.
He's so proud of them. Because of them, probably the world is going to change of something. And those refugees like me, myself, they will have hope.
As the world reacts in horror to the tragedy, people took to the streets of Toronto to call on the government to accept more refugees to prevent any more unnecessary fatalities.
Let me just say, before we get started, we are receiving emails and texts already, and even before the show started, because we did announce all of this morning. And I do want to state a couple of things which, you know, we all have our thoughts and opinions, and I don't think any of us have the answer at this very moment in time. Our leaders in our governments across the whole of Europe are going to be meeting to try and come up with some solutions. But there's some important notes that we need to take into consideration. And one of those is it a bit of a Trojan horse that we could be reenacting or seeing happen? Well, because there's, the main faith of those that are coming from Syria are Muslim. And we know that what the Quran says about Muslims, their intention is obviously to conquer the world and have Sharia law all over the world. Now, does that mean also that they will stick to the Quran completely? And in the Quran there are surahs which are written like the following. It permits lying, especially about the nature of their faith, if the advantage is so. Muslims not to take Jews, Christians and other unbelievers as friends. Islam means also we have to submit to that to become dhimmis. Unbelievers should be killed. The Muslim apostates should be killed or chastised. The heads and fingers of unbelievers should be cut off. And so it goes on. So is this a situation where we could be letting people in that would cause eventually other problems because they don't like our way of life? Now that's looking at in the cold light of day. But then on the other hand, the human side is, what do we do when people are suffering? Because Jesus gave the parable of the Good Samaritan, a man who was not of the same faith as Jesus, as a Jew, and yet his religious leaders, Jesus' religious leaders, were the ones that passed the man who was injured and let him suffer on his own. Whereas the Good Samaritan went in, picked the man up, took him to a hotel, or the equivalent of, and paid the innkeeper to look after the man. That's what Jesus was highlighting. So is that what we should be doing? Doing everything in our power to help those who are suffering. You see families, young people, who are torn apart by the war. As you saw in that particular video, a man had lost his home, lost his business, they'd been bombed. And here he is as a young person looking to find a new life. Should we not be there to help them? Those are some of the questions that we ought to be asking. Do call us on 0208 972 1408. I believe we have our first caller as well. Christina. Thank you, Christina. Hopefully we'll be able to hear you. Do start making your comments now.
Okay. Hello, Howard. It's Christina from Bishop Stortford. I have sent in an email, but I thought I'd phone in case it wasn't read out. I watched you and Leslie this morning. I do know that you both have very, very tender hearts, and I can see where you're coming from. But are you aware that 99% of these Syrians are Muslim? And our brothers and sisters in Christ have been slaughtered and ethnically cleansed in their tens of thousands from all of these Muslim countries, especially Syria. And I've not heard you ask for money for them. I've not heard you say we should take them into our home. Although perhaps we couldn't anyway, because I don't think David Cameron's allowed any Christians in.
Christina,
it just seems like
let me
it's
stop you
one
there,
rule for the
Christina.
Muslims.
Christina, first of all, I haven't asked for any money for anyone like this.
Well, you were saying that you would be setting up a fund in the future on Revelation TV if it was possible.
I said if it was needed or whatever. I said we are praying about it. We're seeking wisdom because I did say that this is not our ministry. There are other ministries out there who have these sort of outreaches to look after the poor and needy. That is their particular forte. It's not ours. Maybe if we did something, it would be to direct your funds or people's funds to such organisations. But I see it as a hot potato and something that is too political, but it doesn't mean to say that we don't care. But we don't, and we certainly care about our Christian brothers, because that is something which scriptures say very clearly that we ought to do. If our brother is in need and we have the means to help them, then we need to do it.
It just seems that we've not heard much. I mean, I've heard some from Christian TV. I've heard practically nothing from mainstream TV about the slaughter and the ethnic cleansing, the genocide of the Christians and the Yazidis, the gang rapes, the horrific torture and beheadings and all of this. And now that the Muslims, when they come here, it's uncontrolled migration. And I'm scared. I am really, really scared. I don't feel safe at all, because I know that the figures show that the more Muslims that are in a nation, the more terrorist attacks there are. So, I mean, That's another important point, Christine, and you're quite right to highlight that, because we're already having problems from disenchanted young people among the Muslim communities in the United Kingdom who are finding their way to jihadists. So this is the other point. Are we going to see more of this sort of backlash, if you like, of more those who want to commit crimes against our country? So, but thank you very much, Christina.
I would just say I'm pretty certain that if Christina was able to go and spend time with these people and talk with these people, you will have compassion upon them. I'm absolutely certain that you would do that as a Christian. To answer your question about how you've not heard about anything, I know that for one, we did something on Late Show and we did something on Just a Minute about
Church Without Walls.
And Church Without Walls with regards to the persecution of Christians, and I think it's an important subject which we need to keep going on about. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, what would Jesus have us to do in this situation? And I think also we need to have confidence in the gospel. If these people are coming to us, the gospel is the power to salvation. And I think instead of being afraid of these people coming to us, let us be confident that the gospel can reach into their hearts and convert them to Christ. And I think where we failed as a nation is where all these ethnic groups came into the nation. We allowed them to not to integrate, and we didn't actually evangelize them as well as we should have.
Christina, come back just for a second or two, and then let's move on.
Sure. I would just say that they attack us if we evangelise, and it is too dangerous. And also they lie, and their religion tells them it's okay, Tikia, to pretend they're of a different faith if it's advantageous. So I don't see how we can evangelise them.
Okay, thank you, Christina, for bringing up some interesting points that I'm sure will get people going tonight. Hugh, Pastor Hugh, what would you think about the whole situation as a Christian?
I completely echo what Ian said. In fact, I thought he was reading my notes there for a minute. I listened to Christine's voice, and the thing that concerns me is the fear element. Not to in any way, I'm sure Christine represents a lot of people who will also be feeling this way. But the problem didn't start with the migrants. The problem started a long time ago. We're just seeing the tail end of it, if you like.
How long ago would you say?
Well, I mean, as far back as the Bible can go, really. What I'm saying is that we've been talking on this channel and in other programs for some years. We've been talking about our attitudes towards other ethnic groups, our attitudes towards let's say, the Muslim people as in general. We have to remember that we are talking about, sometimes we're talking about these extremist groups and their beliefs, but we must always bear in mind that at the heart of the refugee crisis are people. They are people. They are human beings. They may, some of them, be emanating from these religious groups, but that doesn't deny them the rights as human beings. And what Ian said is absolutely correct. We have to be confident. Those who are Christians, we can't be afraid and say, well, these people are coming, you know. Listen, they said this in the 70s and in the 80s, even in the 60s, when black people were coming into England, people said similar things. The BNP still say it till today. So we can't be afraid.
Very good. Okay. We want to hear from you, and we are hearing from you, so please do try and get through on the number that comes up on your screen every now and again, and keep your emails and text short so we can get them on screen as well. Let's take our next caller. Caller, welcome to Revelation TV, The Late Show. What's your name, please?
I don't wish to give my name, thank you.
Okay.
I am a viewer.
Okay.
And I support Revelation TV.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, my love.
Right. Whilst I agree as Christians we reach out to the poor and needy, we have to be realistic that not all these people are refugees. A lot of them are immigrants. And in the Old Covenant, the Lord warned Israel, if you let the foreigner in, they will bring their gods with them. And this has happened in Britain. We have not evangelized, and we're not allowed to now. We've got to be very careful what we say and what we wear. My son, for 4 years now, has had his benefit of £74 a week frozen because of the lack of money that Britain has, because we're billions in debt. Our schools are overcrowded. Teachers cannot cope with the massive migration of people coming here. We haven't got the room and we haven't got the resources. And I think that the United Nations and worldwide organisations should be looking at how the refugees, when they flee Syria, can stay in the Middle East with their own culture and their own gods, because they do not want us to practice our beliefs here anymore. There's people going to court for wearing a cross. And yes, we can reach out to the poor and needy, but let's reach out to our own people first. And then if we've got money in the pot, we've got the room in our country, then we have to do, like now in Hungary, they put the fences, they're making people go through a proper system to find out, because they're saying, oh, they'll become Christians, but it's only to get into these countries. Okay. And if we don't watch out, it will get worse here. Can't you see the warnings already?
Yes, but we want to hear from people like yourselves and people who have a different opinion as well. But thank you very much for putting that so succinctly. Some of the problems that we're facing here is also how we balance these with Scripture. Because do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers. Okay, this is to the aliens, right? The alien residents. Okay, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. So Hebrews chapter 13 verse 2 is New Testament as well. So we can see this from other scriptures as well, but there was the warning, as the caller said, in Old Testament times, you mustn't bring in the strangers with their foreign gods.
Well, I think that's a misunderstanding of the Old Testament situation. The situation in the Old Testament was Canaan was a foreign country, and Israel were actually called to be a light to the nations, and God gave them that country. But the problem was that they integrated with Canaan, the Canaanites. So that's about. But having said that, I think she makes an important point. This last caller makes an important point. That whatever we do with the migrants which are now facing us, across the Channel and in Germany. And remember, there are 900,000 came into Germany in the last year. Those 900,000 in 5 years' time will be eligible to come straight to Britain and any other country of the EC. So whatever Germany is doing, it actually affects us now. So that's why she is right that there needs to be a European decisions made, and one of the issues is that David Cameron is standing back from that and not being part of this decision-making process. The second thing she said, which was sensible as well, is the solution has to be in the Middle East. I mean, many of these people don't want to actually leave their homes. They would rather be in their homes. Many of them had good lives.
Exactly.
Had good lives.
It shows how desperate they are to leave their home.
Yeah.
People don't like to leave their home country.
And we've got to help to get them back there as well, and the issue has to be solved there.
Right. Okay, Martin's on the line. Martin, hopefully you'll have some good advice for people, and be interested to hear your points of view on the migrant crisis. Thank you, Martin. Welcome to the programme.
Good evening, Howard. It's Martin here.
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, good evening, Howard. It's Martin from the Isle of Wight. I spoke to you years ago. And I think it is a superb show. I'm not a Christian, but I think you guys are doing the most wonderful job, because these people are in trouble, and they're in trouble, and Christians around the world are helping them. It doesn't matter what faith they are, but with your faith, you're helping them. I've just seen, you know, in the Western world, we are helping people, and I think it's absolutely marvellous what you do.
Well, I think Britain, in general, is very good. Thank you very much, Martin.
You know, I mean, I know through Howard, street pastors have come over to, and I met them I live on the Isle of Wight, and they said, "Where are you going?" to see Howard. And I watched Revelation TV.
Oh, thank God for
not
that,
being a
Martin.
believer. And they were so proud of Howard, and I think you do a superb job. And the thing is that at this particular time, we have to take mercy. You know, it could happen to us.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so I think, you know, all this rubbish people think about, you know, Muslims, etc., just goes away, and you do a superb job. So I'd just like to thank you very, very much for what you're doing, and putting out a good message. And I mean, it's always in the media that is the downside. They look on the downside, but you look at all the people who are helping people, and how the Germans welcome them. I was shed a tear when I saw the Germans clapping them as they came through the station. I thought, what a beautiful thing for those people to come from the end of that journey and be welcomed like that.
In fact, let's see if we can find that particular video of the Germans actually coming to welcome them, and even the young children, the German children, giving toys to other would-be migrant children as well.
And I'll read some verses of this.
Right, but thank you so much.
Before we let Martin go,
okay.
I'm interested to know. Martin said several times. Martin, you said that you're not a Christian. I just wondered, why do you say that? What makes you say that? You're not a Christian.
Why do I say it?
Yeah, why do you say that?
Because I'm too scientifically based. You know, I mean, I respect everything you say, and I really do. But I just can't sort of believe that. But, I mean, everybody has their own beliefs, don't they?
Yeah, but you obviously admire the work that's going on in Christian TV here at Revelation TV.
Very much so.
My colleague sitting next to me is very much a scientific-minded guy as well. My sense, I don't know what you feel, Howard, but I'm listening to your voice, and I can hear your heart, and I'm thinking, I don't know what, sometimes maybe people don't identify with what we say when we talk about Christianity, but Christianity begins with the heart. The only reason why we are here, because we all have one common belief, and that is in a person, not in a faith, not in Christianity. Our faith is in Jesus, and that's the only thing that separates someone like you, brother, from us. Yes, and His love. That's the only thing that separates us, and my thought was, why should we be separated?
Well, I think you personally, sir, are a fantastic person.
I think you're fantastic.
I'm okay as well. Don't forget me.
Let's keep on track here. But Martin, thank you.
Can I read these words?
Why?
Yeah.
Can I say why?
Go on.
because you don't come over as sort of trying to be presumptuous and throwing down everybody's neck. I mean, and
well, neither do you.
I like that. I mean, I personally don't believe because I'm sort of, as I said, scientific. But I mean, what you're doing, you chaps, is absolutely marvellous.
Okay.
And there's a lot of people follow you. I mean. As I said,
So Isaac Newton was scientific and he was a believer, so you could be in good company there, Martin.
well, Howard won't remember, but I had a good bit of banter with him years ago when more people get through, and that's what it needs. It needs the sort of like the Christian.
Okay.
At the moment, the Christian faith seems. It doesn't reach out to the younger people, especially with this crisis.
Well, maybe this is an opportunity
what you're doing
to do
tonight is superb.
Yeah.
So anyway, look, I shan't bore you anymore.
All right.
So it's Martin from the Isle of Wight, Howard.
Okay.
Remember me.
I will now.
I shall tell the pastors that I've spoken to you, Howard.
All right, bless you. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We show the B-roll.
Yeah. We haven't got enough of it. I thought we had a lot more.
Okay. These are the words of Jesus. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer to him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and gave you a drink? When did you see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Mm-hmm. Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? And the king will answer and say to him, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. And I think these words of Jesus, he's actually saying, and that's what really will win people for Christ. It's the compassion of Christ, shown in believers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to say it's easy answers.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this. This is based on Romans 14, 1 to 23. As for those who are weak in faith, welcome him. Okay? In other words, those who are not of the faith as well. But not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while another person may eat only vegetables. So it uses that sort of, not to judge really what one and the other is doing. But really, it's basically helping others to have an understanding of what Christ stood for. And we can see from many, many of the scriptures, both in the New Testament and the Old Testament, that God is saying to love your enemies. Even if you considered them, this is the dilemma really, if you considered the Muslims as an enemy, I'm just saying if you did, yeah. Jesus is saying you're to love your enemies mm-hmm. and to pray for them. Yeah. And I suppose really, if they have a need, to meet that need. Mm. It's an obligation. Whether or not you are taken advantage of or you're lied to or whatever the situation, that's not your problem. The problem is do what the Lord would have you do.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we had a caller a little while ago who was talking about sort of comparing the Britain to Israel and so on and so forth, not letting the idolater in and so on. But the thing is, think about some of the programs we've done over the last year where it's been quite clear that public opinion really is that Britain isn't even a Christian country anymore. So I mean, I'm just saying, you know, at this point now we want to protect our country, but the question is, why do we want to protect it? Are we being selfish or are we being Christian?
Well, also you've got to be, that's a good point, but you have to be realistic. Yeah. Can we cope with huge numbers? Because they could run into hundreds of thousands, where you overload the NHS, there isn't the infrastructure there isn't the doctors, there isn't the schools, there's all the practical things about how you can
But cope. Ian's made the point, it's going to affect us anyway, so it's about how we let it affect us.
But this is interesting, is it not? We need to deal with and ask these questions and find an answer. We need the wisdom of Joseph, as I said this morning. Joseph was one who was able to be used by God to supply food and the needs to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in his time. Let's have a listen to what June has to say as we go to continue with the next caller. Thank you, June, for joining us. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you for letting me join the show. Yeah. I just want to introduce myself. As you said, my name is June. The first comment I would like to make is about the Good Samaritan. And what comes out in that parable to me is that the Samaritan wasn't brought to where the good person was. He went to the Samaritan and he left him there, and he was cared for there, and he paid for his care there. And I think that's an important point.
Very good.
And the Bible also says we treat believers differently from unbelievers. And I think there's a possibility, if we're not careful, we could confuse the teaching and take the teaching for believers and apply it to unbelievers, and that could get us in trouble.
Yeah.
I would go on now to Islam. I know that many Muslims are unaware of what the Quran and the Hadith teach and are horrified by what's happening. But I would like to draw attention to a couple of things. The first one is the teaching of hijrah. That's jihad by immigration. It's to overwhelm the host countries and establish Islam in them. And it's supposed to be that many of these people who are masquerading as migrants are coming from the non-conflict zones because they want to apply hijrah to Europe. And I think that's something they have to be careful of. They also use taqiyya, which is
Can I challenge you before you move on, June? How do you know they're coming from non-conflict zones? Which evidence do you...
on the internet. I read things like Jihad Watch and the Religion of Peace website.
So what evidence is there that these immigrants are coming from non-conflict zones? Because I've not actually seen. You could be true, and it could be that in amongst these there are some. But most of the people I've seen interviewed on television and that have come from Syria. They've come from Sudan. They've come from Libya. I've not. Which non-conflict zone are they actually coming from?
They are possibly not coming from the non-conflict zones, but they will tell you that in the fields round about Hungary, they are picking up Pakistani and Bangladeshi identity cards, which have been thrown away because they want to masquerade as Iraqis to get into Europe.
So that's not mass immigration, though, is it? There are some, and I would say we've got to be very careful and got to be very wise. But to make the statement that all these people coming in are coming from
I wouldn't say all of them.
Yeah. So how many of them?
Well, I can't give that number. We'd really need to go back to the people who do the statistics.
Well, that's why I think they're having to get this organised. That's why they're asking people to register. And I think with close examination, they would be able to distinguish between those who are saying they're coming from a war-torn area to those who are not. So that could be followed through. So I would say you have to leave that to the regulators. But
I'm just telling you what's available for reading on the internet, and also what there is on the internet is about that poor little boy who drowned. Now, the websites are saying, and it's on Jihad Watch, that they had free housing in Turkey, and that the mother and the two children decided to go across in a boat so they would get asylum status as a single mother, and then later on the husband would join them. Now, if that's true, then we've been really taken.
Okay. Well, on the other hand, it may not be true because you can't trust everything you read on the internet, that's for sure.
Well, I thought Jihad Watch was a pretty reliable website.
I don't know.
It does tell us that there are thousands of ISIS fighters have come in with the migrants.
Yeah.
They told us that yesterday.
Right. But Aylan Kurdi and his brother who were drowned, and indeed the mother, I think was also accompanied, was he not, with the husband? I don't think they were separated.
Well, that's what they said. They said that the husband travelled from Turkey when he saw the photos.
But certainly the sister there, as you saw on the video on your screen, was one who'd sent the money for them directly to go to join her. I think she's in Canada. Is that right?
That's right. She's in Canada. But I'm just telling you what's on the Jihad Watch website, particularly with Fakir being a main tenet of their faith.
All right, June. Well, bless you. You brought some good points up as well, and things that we need to consider. We certainly need the wisdom of God to be able to discern truth from fiction, really, as well.
We've got to be very, very careful, however, Howard, what's on the internet. There is, you know, Jeremy and I did a program about this last week, and you just have to pray about everything that you read on the internet. There are images that are being manipulated, and I'm not saying you just don't know.
Either side.
You don't, on either side. Yeah. It's a time like, I suppose, in the war with propaganda on both sides. You can't trust necessarily what you read on the internet, but you can trust the Spirit of God. And that's why we need to pray and have wisdom.
Good. And the other thing that we need to focus on as well, we need to trust, or we do, I know we wouldn't be here, in what the Word of the Lord is saying in the Bible. Because he talked about a time of great trouble where the world would be in tumult, and there would be one disaster after another. And this human crisis is in biblical proportion of a gigantic, almost unsolvable problem. And it won't stop here, because once these dear people find a place, that millions will follow, because there's going to be all sorts of other issues that this world is going to find that it can't solve. But we do know from Scripture that God has a plan, and he has things already in motion to bring in his Son, Jesus Christ, as the, if you like, the world leader. But sadly, before then, we're going to see more of this sort of terrible time of great trouble that Jesus spoke about.
May I back you up on that, Howard? Because I don't know about other ministers who may be ministering the gospel, but for many years I have been saying on pulpits around the UK that something is coming, and it's coming to the UK. Now, many people have had a sense that something was coming, but they didn't know what it was necessarily. I was very surprised when I'm now looking at the news, because I didn't think it would be this crisis. But the more it develops, because it's a human crisis and it is such a difficult one to manage, I'm actually seeing now that this is one of the things that we can actually, as the body of Christ, we should be beginning to, in a sense, rejoice. Because why? People are, in a sense, we heard the first caller saying how she's afraid. You remember when 9/11 happened, how people started to be afraid, but at that time also when fear comes, people also start looking for answers. And when they don't find the answers from the government, from the people who are supposed to be in the know, then they look to the word of the Lord, or they look to those who have some wisdom. And right now, the only wisdom that's going to work is the wisdom of love. And that makes no sense to the world, but it makes perfect sense to the world of Christianity.
I just want to pick up one of the points that's been made by a number of callers, and that is, can we afford? I am proud of my father's generation, who spent £300 years of their national wealth freeing Europe from enslavement to Nazism. And they did the right thing, and then they counted the cost. And I was brought up as a baby boomer, and know, all the sort of things, the deprivation of the 50s and 60s because of that. But they did the right thing. And surely we need to actually start saying, what is the right thing to do? What is the Christian thing to do? What would Christ want us to do? And then we look at the cost.
Right, you can't look at the cost first. But one of the practical things which David Cameron people are talking about right now is the 12 billion or so a year which is going in foreign aid should be used, some of that should be diverted to issues like this, because we're giving away to aid to countries that are sending rockets to the sky, so I mean, a bit silly to keep sending them money when really there is real issues on our doorstep and could be literally in our doorstep. So please, Jean, we've got Jean on the line. Welcome to the programme, Jean. We'd love to hear what you have to say on this particular issue. Do start, give us your comments now.
Yes, hello. It's just a brief comment, really. I mean, what we're seeing on the television, especially those two young boys were drowned, and the phenomenal response of everybody in this country and around the world. And I'm really very disappointed that the same kind of compassion wasn't shown to the Christians last year. And there was very little reported in the mainstream televisions. It was on your television, there was on the Middle East report, and there was behind the headlines, but none of the mainstream televisions seemed to carry much about it at all.
You're talking about the Christians who were beheaded.
Crucified.
Yes.
They were being buried alive, burned alive, and on one of the programs, Andrew White was speaking about some children that would not deny Jesus Christ, and they were beheaded.
Right, yes.
I don't understand the church, why they didn't help the Christians more, and this great upsurge now in compassion, which is fine, it's what we're meant to do. I did send you an email early on this morning. I'm the one that sent you one about the price list.
Okay.
That your lady wife read out.
Oh, mate, all right. But my lady wife's at home, so I'll have to... I can't read all of them, and we had hundreds or so emails this morning.
I sent it this morning.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry, Jean.
all I wanted to say. How disappointed I was with the lack of response from this country for the Christians that were being hounded out of Mosul and Nineveh by ISIS.
Right. No, very good point, Jean. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome, my love. You don't expect the world to actually respond to the needs of the Christians, because we're marginalised, we're actually something which is persona non grata. People don't really like the gospel message in this generation. So you can understand that to an extent, but it does seem, now that there's so much being given out on the media, and your hearts go out for this young boy, or the two brothers there. But this is a tip of the iceberg in many respects, and when we let in the Trojan horse, this is what I was saying earlier, we could have a really big problem in 10 years' time.
Yeah, but we talk about letting in. We haven't let hardly anybody in. I mean, even this great announcement today, he's talking about 20,000 over the next 5 years. I mean, Germany takes in, that's 4,000 a year. Germany is taking in 4,000 a day.
I know. It's been an amazing response.
We talk about the flood of immigrants coming to this country.
But what about the Arab world that can afford to do this?
Absolutely.
They're the richest among the nations with just oil. I mean, you just got it growing in your backyard.
Absolutely.
They've done very little, if not anything at all, to help their own brothers and sisters.
If you saw on the news tonight, you will see on most of the tents there's the Saudi Arabian side. They're putting, like Britain, they're putting all their money into building the camps round about, because they believe
But in countries like Jordan?
In Jordan. But Saudi Arabia has put a lot of... Now, I am not defending these countries. I think we should have an international conference. I would say that where is President Obama? He was up in Alaska last week. I mean, this is the biggest crisis facing the world today. And where is he? He's up in Alaska, and with Bear Grylls, I mean, he should be taking the lead, solving this issue, calling the G7 together, the G20 together, and saying we're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve this problem. The other thing is, whilst and I do agree about the Christians, and many of them are in the camps now. They've flown away, and many Christians were persecuted, and they were silent, and it frustrated us when they were silent. But the vast majority of people who are being killed by ISIS at the moment are Muslims, and that's why these Muslims are getting out there, because you know what they're like. These Muslims are very westernized in their dress, and ISIS don't like that, and they want to change them into their version of Islam. And so these Muslims are actually being persecuted. So that's why the majority of people fleeing are actually Muslim at this moment in time.
Okay, your turn to give us your comments. 0208 972 1408 is the telephone number, live at revelationtv.com, and the text number for SMSs is also on your screen. Philip, we welcome you to the programme. Thank you very much for being with us. Do start letting us have your comments.
I was rather perturbed by the way you started the programme tonight, because the first thing that you talked about was the fact that most of the refugees who come here will be Muslims. That doesn't alter the fact that they're human beings. We've got to take in as many refugees as we can. I mean, the only way to really solve this problem is to deal with it at its source and get the Middle East sorted out.
And you can do it?
But that's going to take years. But just to carry on, the first thing you talked about, the fact that there will be Muslims, I think is a bit rich.
Okay, well, you've had your say, and you're very welcome to make your comments, and thank you very much for being on Revelation TV tonight.
To be fair, that was a comment of Christina at the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't you speaking, it was giving Christina a voice.
But nevertheless, you can understand why Philip would actually get that message and think that we really got it sorted out. But they're trying to sort it at source. Unfortunately, we've made so many mistakes as a country, as a nation, going into Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., and Libya, and we've left a bit of a mess. So if we went into Syria to sort Assad out, well, would be any better off? I don't think so. We probably could have been giving ammunition and the wherewithal to the wrong people who would have made the situation even worse. The thing is when you have evil in the world, which is what the Bible talks about, and these men or women who have this evil intent to take the lives of others indiscriminately will be held to account according to the Scriptures. But unfortunately, till that day of judgment comes, we have to put up with it. What can we do about it? That's what we need an answer, and we'd love to hear from you.
Well, there was an interesting article in the news today, actually, Howard. I don't know if you've heard about it. There's an Egyptian gentleman, somebody talking about what the Arab world doing about it, but an Egyptian billionaire who's offering to buy an island for the refugees, and he's serious. He's offering to buy an island, put them, could handle 100,000 to 200,000 people. His name is Naguib Sawiris, and that's in the news tonight.
Well, that's a good practical offer, really, isn't it? But that's not going to be able to cope with I think the millions of people who are going to start to flee.
Of course not. Well, I mean, we're talking about a 5-year war in Syria. We're talking about over 3 million apparently being displaced from their homes.
Already.
But that's one person making an effort to try and to do something. So it's worth mentioning. There are other millionaires. There are many millionaires in that part of the world who possibly could do something. Yeah.
Is money the answer?
It would help.
It certainly would. It certainly would. And your heart goes out, as I say, for people who just have not got a place to lay their head. There are going to be hundreds of thousands of people without anywhere for either food, to go to the toilet, to educate their children, to make the time of day count. Where are they going? The worries, the fears that those people would have. You look at their faces. Really tragic, whatever happens. Maybe this is an opportunity that Christians could actually engage with others about the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel of Jesus Christ, which the offer of knowing what this world is going to come to eventually, and it's not a good outcome initially, but the outcome eventually is great, because in the new heaven and new earth, which Jesus promises in Revelation 21, if you haven't heard this message before, have a look at the last book in the Bible, Revelation chapter 21. It talks about the way that God is going to end all these sort of problems that we're suffering from. No more war, no more crime, no more food shortages, none of the things that like diseases and things, those will be gone. We will have what we'd call utopia, but a new heaven, new earth. Thank you very much. We have Howard on the line. Thank you, Howard, for joining us, sir. Please go ahead with your comment.
Okay, first off, I'm like you. I'm looking for the rapture, and I'm convinced deep in my spirit that it's just a short ways away. And we're in this trouble that we're in because of our politicians. They have deserted our God with all this homosexuality and all this stuff, marriage, you know. And I'm afraid that we have reached a point of no return, as they talk about in war. When we send out planes, they're going to a certain point, and when they get to the point of no return, it's war. And that's what we're coming about now, because people, our nation has forgotten God. You'd wonder where Obama stands. He's on the Islamic side, I can tell you. And apparently the English are the same way. Now, Revelation says that he saw these people that was beheaded for Christ, and he said, God said, wait a while until your brothers are also killed. And I think we're seeing that today. Now, this is going to sound harsh, but those people that stand up for Christ and are beheaded is a fulfillment of that thing that John saw. And I say, we don't have to worry about them, but yes, it's a shame that we didn't do something about it. But they will be in heaven before we do. And the only thing we can do now is to take 2 Chronicles 7:14. My people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and their wicked ways. Then he will hear from heaven and heal their lands. But I'm afraid we've gone to that point of no return, so we got to be ready for the rapture.
Okay, thank you, Howard.
That's what I got to say.
Yeah, bless you. Thank you very much. Good scriptural references there. You can't really argue with that.
No. Well, you can.
Go on,
I would actually say he's quite right, quoting Chronicles 7:14, because it's important. But you know, we blame the politicians, but that if the meat is rotten, you know, you can't blame, and the salt is not in the meat, you can't blame the meat for going rotten. And if the church is not in the world taking the gospel of Christ, then you can't blame us if we've got rotten politicians. And we have got rotten politicians. And if there's no revival in Britain today, then who's to blame? Well, who does God blame?
The Christians.
Well, the church. It's church. And that's the whole point of Chronicles 7:14. It's not those politicians to blame, it's us to blame. The church is to blame for the state of Britain today. We've allowed it. We've been asleep for the last 40 years. We've had our praise meetings. We've had all sorts of things like this and that, while the world's been going in a different direction. And we've lost a heritage of 2,000 years in one generation because we have been asleep. And I think God will judge this generation of Christians, my generation of Christians, me, for what we haven't done.
Maybe you agree or disagree with Ian or any of us. We'd love to hear from you, but we are going to be shortly going to a break, and we will be going into the second hour after that. So do keep this number in mind, 0208 972 1408, and live at revelationtv.com, and the SMS number, which will be on your screen. Can't remember everything, so I can't do all these little numbers. I'm dyslexic. But anyway, Hugh, just anything you want to pick up from what was just being said?
After listening to Ian say that, all that's going through my head is which came first, the chicken or the egg, you know? I mean, who do you blame? That's something we need to ponder, I know.
But is it really a matter of trying to find someone to blame, or is it a matter of we are where we are in the stream of human history? Christ and the prophets before him absolutely foretold the things that we are seeing unfold. They're all in Scripture. People might not like to know that, but this were written millennium ago, and so they're all coming to pass.
But
is there anything we can do about it?
But the governments of today, to defend Howard, his words, the governments of today are faced with a choice now. Ian's right in what he says. The church has been asleep, but the governments today have a choice. Which way are you going to turn? You can see what's happening in the nations. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. You look at what you're doing and you make a decision. That's what they have to decide now. But as Ian says,
you push aside all that God has been saying through His Word. You lay that aside and you pay the piper. And this is a generation, I think, is actually going to pay the worst price ever. And unfortunately, we have the job of being here, and we must do something about it. The church needs to waken up to its responsibilities, that's for sure. But we want you to also partake in the program so that we can hear from you. We'll be back shortly after this very short break. Thank you.
And I had crisis after crisis after crisis.
It was out of such a crisis that Christ for All Nations was born.
A big director came to visit me in Lesotho, and he saw my activity there. I had established a printing press. I had established other projects to evangelistically penetrate Lesotho. They became scared, and they said, look, that's all commendable, but if you go bankrupt, your lenders will not get after you, they will get after us because you are one of us. You see, we want you to stop. Stop, stop. I wanted peace. We had been arguing for years. I was so tired of arguing, and I said, Lord, doesn't your word say that we should live in peace? Why can't I submit to my brothers? Why can't I? And then just live in peace. But I was not, I said to Annie, my wife, I said, I book into an hotel, in a lodge there. I will fast and pray until I've heard from God. Until I've heard from God. I went to that Riverside Lodge. I booked myself in. The moment I came into that room, I fell flat on my knees. I cried out. I said, oh Lord, what now? What now? You've showed me a blood-washed Africa, and here I'm told to stop. What now? What must I do? Shall I submit? Shall I be in peace with them? That moment the Holy Spirit spoke to me. I really felt God speak. He said to me, if you drop the vision of a blood-washed Africa, I have to drop you and look for somebody else. Gordon, I started to shake and tremble. I said, Lord, let everyone drop me. I don't care, but you don't drop me. I want to be in your hands, only in your hands, no matter what. I decided I had to hurry. I jumped up from my knees. My fasting hadn't lasted an hour. I jumped up, I paid my bill, I got into the car, I drove home. I said, Annie, where is my typewriter? I want to type, I want to resign. She said, oh, can't you please sleep one night over it? I said, no sleeping necessary. I don't want God to drop me.
It's an amazing story, Reinhard. I wonder if you could just look to the camera. There may be some folks who are going through a crisis situation themselves at this moment of time. Would you pray for them?
Yeah. Well, you just heard me. Every time I just talk about what happened to me when God led me and lifted me, it moves my spirit. It really moves my spirit. And maybe your heart is moved as well. And if you are in a similar situation, my recommendation to you is don't fall into man's hands. You'll be very sorry. Fall into God's hands. These nail-pierced hands have the ability to lift you like no other hands. If you know you're calling from God in the name of Jesus, return to it. Act upon it. And He will be the lifter of your head eternally in Jesus' name. And then God's plan will find fulfillment through your life. Go forward. Come on. Go forward. God goes with goers and works with workers. But He doesn't sit with sitters, and neither sleeps with sleepers. Come on. Get going for